You could eat no fructose whatsoever and yet still activate this pathway because we can make our own fructose within our bodies and stimulate uric acid production just as if we'd eaten, drank a glass of orange juice. And how does that happen? Well, when, for example, the body thinks it's dehydrated, and that sensing is done because the sodium level is going up in the blood, we have sensors that detect that elevation of sodium and say, whoa, this person's dehydrated. We better turn on fructose production, which becomes uric acid, which says make more fat. Now, why in the world would we want to make fat when we're becoming dehydrated? What kind of sense does that make? And to explain that, I want to just have you and your viewers consider, and let's say an animal that can go 3 weeks without drinking water. It can walk across a hot environment, walk across the desert. And this animal has a peculiar part of its body called a hump on its back. Now, if you look inside the camel's hump, which is its key to survival, what do you find? You find that it's full of fat, not water. Because when the camel, when you, when I, when a mouse, when a bird uses fat for energy, we create two things: carbon dioxide, which we exhale, and water, metabolic water. So when we store body fat, like the camel, like the whale, like the hummingbird, we are storing a resource, yes, for calories, but also that our bodies can use to make what's called metabolic water. So that gets back to our bodies sensing dehydration because the sodium level went up. It kicks in this pathway to make fructose in your own body, make uric acid, make body fat. So you have a resource to have water, so you're not going to become dehydrated and die in the desert. So interestingly, then, this explains something that we've puzzled over for many, many years, and that is, why is it that people who eat a lot of salt gain a lot of body fat? Why is it that people who eat a lot of salt have high blood pressure? Why do they get diabetes? I mean, salt has no calories, and we're all told that, gaining weight is simply calories in versus calories out. Therefore, salt should be totally fine. Well, it isn't. Eating salt raises the salt level in your blood, tells your body we're becoming dehydrated, make fat very quickly, and activates this whole pathway. So it really does tend to explain a lot of stuff that we haven't understood in the past about, these mechanisms for making fat, for becoming a diabetic, for raising the blood pressure. In glucose metabolism, at the end of the line, once glucose is dealt with, then our bodies tend to shut off the metabolism. It's done. There are feedback mechanisms to reduce then its metabolism. Fructose, on the other hand, instead of shutting off its metabolism, actually enhances its own metabolism. It makes it happen more and more, again, as a survival mechanism. And what is it that enhances that activity? Something called uric acid. Who knew? Uric acid actually enhances the first enzyme called fructokinase, which is involved in the breakdown of fructose and the consumption of energy. It actually enhances the enzyme that's involved in the creation of more fructose in your body, as we talked about earlier, from glucose. So this is a very, very powerful system that is in place to keep us alive. And it worked for millions and millions of years when our evolution, our genes, our physiology were in alignment with our world, with our environment, our world of food scarcity, of food instability, when our bodies didn't know and had to prepare, give us an advantage, give us the superpower, if you will, to be able to survive during times of food scarcity. Nowadays, we're experiencing what's called this evolutionary environmental mismatch, meaning we still have all the genes in place, all that physiology in place, this pathway that you and I have been talking about, but the environment has changed. Now we're targeting this exact pathway in a time of fructose abundance. Here in America, our fructose consumption from 1970 to 1990 increased 1,000%. So we're pounding this signal, preparing for winter every day of the year, and it never comes. And so we keep packing those nuts away for, like the squirrels do. In this case, it's body fat in preparation for a time of fasting, and it never arrives. These pathways are working exactly how they've worked for millions of years, but we're signaling them in a wrong way. And that's why the uric acid story is so fascinating. Because from the perspective of our ancestry, and I'm talking about only 17,000 years ago, and then moving back for millions of years, this was a terrific pathway. It was life-saving for us to make a little more fat, to raise our blood pressure, to increase our blood sugar so that we could power the brain with that blood sugar. And that's the biggest card that we hold in our hand. We're not the fastest animal around. We're not the strongest, but we have the biggest brain in proportion to we have a big brain. And that powering that brain is our ace in the hole. That's our high card, and helped our ancestors avoid two things: starvation and predation. We could find food because we were clever, and we could avoid being eaten by another animal because, again, we were clever. We were powering our brains.